Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of chapter 5 in our video series, There Is No Collapse. Picking up where we left off, but pivoting as we're picking up from where we left off, I want to bring something else to everyone's attention. Understand that the power elite that run this world and subsequently runs the markets also is in charge of bending and shaping ideas around the markets as well. Remember, at the end of the day, it's about profit. And so they have to paint a picture of urgency. It's one of those techniques in marketing where you have to create a sense of urgency. All right, that's selling 101. Uh, a little bit of background for those of you who are just tuning in. Maybe you missed the first 4 parts. I highly encourage you to go back and listen to the other parts, the first 4 parts, along with part 5, part 1 of part 5, so you can get an overall idea what's going on. But a little background about myself. I worked on Wall Street. I designed trading systems for wealthy clients, designed specifically for to cater to their needs, whatever it was they were trying to do, whether they needed to hedge themselves in soybeans or if they needed to do something in crude oil, whatever the case may be, Apple stock, you name it. That's what I did. I've worked, excuse me, I've done a couple of things. I also worked in law enforcement, and I also worked in insurance and the healthcare side of things. So I've done quite a few things. I've done a lot in my life. You'd be surprised. That's why I can speak so authoritatively on various subjects, because I lived it. Also, I like to fashion myself as a sort of a journalist slash historian, if you will. Of course, amateur, because everything I do, is self-taught and stuff. I'm not saying professional, but I've made it my life's work to interview all sorts of people that I've ever come in contact with. Um, and I've known a lot of people, worked with a lot of different people from all walks of life, including celebrities and including powerful business people and high up in government, you name it. And working in law enforcement, you meet a lot of people and learn a lot of things too. Some of which I can actually share with you, but I'll leave that for another set of videos. And that's how Homeland Security is pretty much swallowing up all the local law enforcements under the umbrella of Homeland Security. But we'll leave that for another set of videos. I want you to look at this picture right here. This picture, for those of you who don't have children, or maybe you are never played video games, this is Mario, okay? And this is little Yoshi. Isn't he cute? He's adorable. And that's one of your little flying, what is it, Zumbas or turtles, whatever. Turtles happen to be my favorite pets, by the way. I love turtles. But as you look, it says betrayal. You traitorous swine. Mario basically used Yoshi to hop, and then he betrays him by jumping off of him, basically bouncing off of him, and letting Yoshi fall to his death, basically. All right. Mario knew what he was going to do before he did it, and he used little Yoshi to get him to the next level where he was trying to get to. And the point that I'm trying to make with this picture, which is one of my favorite, is that I want you gold bugs out there, gold and silver bugs, to really listen up to what I'm about to say to you, because I want to put this out here so that you can hear something that you're probably not hearing. Now, before I move forward, I'm going to tell you I love precious metals. I love gold and silver. I own gold and silver. Okay? So I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say something crazy. All right, I actually do own it. I like the silver stuff. In my opinion, it is still a store of value, has been for like 5,000 years. Gold and silver is money and not paper. We know this. I just want to put that out there because as I go forward, you may want to choke and strangle me when you hear the things I'm going to say. That's why I want to put it out there that I love gold and silver. All right, I love trading gold and silver. I've had clients that that's all they did was exclusively trade metals. That's the only thing they wanted to trade, and I like gold and silver. All right, I own some physical gold and silver coins and whatnot. I do own physicals. I have it in my possession, not in a storage locker or in a safe or somewhere offshore. It's in my possession because, as you know, how does it say? Possession is nine-tenths of the law, something like that. Bottom line is, if you don't have it in your hand, then you don't own it. Okay, so I know all that. Just want to clear the air with that going forward. I love gold and silver. I trade gold and silver for myself and for my clients as well, and I also buy and accumulate. So I do own the physicals, and I have no problem with that. I also trade the paper markets because they're easily tradable because they're rigged and manipulated, so you can pretty much get an idea of how to trade it because it's there. We'll get into that too. All right, so I laid the groundwork. Now I can move forward and hit you with the hard stuff. Okay, here we go. I believe that based on what I have seen, what I've heard, and what I know, is that the majority of the public is being deceived and manipulated into accumulating gold and silver under false pretenses. Now, let me break it down further. As you know, in this series, we've been talking about, in our last segment, fear porn. They're using fear and end of the world apocalyptic scenarios to get you to buy more of their wares. You go to their seminars, you're stacking, which is nothing wrong with stacking. Stacking is good in good and bad times. It doesn't matter. But the point I want you to really hear me out on is what they're doing and how they're manipulating your conscience and your emotions through apocalyptic forecast. Ooh, the dollar is gonna die tomorrow. It's gonna die in a month. It's gonna die in a year. Oops, no, I meant next year, the year after that. No, the year after that. Just stringing you along, having you to, and everyone is selling gold and silver of some sort now, or selling some book or tape or series of lectures, you name it. The gold and silver industry is huge, and I'm not talking about just the market, the tradable paper markets like the GLD and the SLV ETFs. I'm talking about, from futures to the forex where you can trade spot. It used to be able to trade spot here in the States. Now you can only do it overseas if you're an overseas person. But it's a huge industry in and of itself. You have people that I respect, okay, like Peter Schiff and Gerald Salente and all these other people on YouTube and everywhere. They spout it. That's all they do. They pump it, and they want you to buy it. And that's how it is. Anyone who makes money off of it obviously has a vested interest in you buying it. I'm just saying. Now, again, let me preface it by saying that there's nothing wrong with stacking, all right? But you need to understand how you're being manipulated. Like, for instance, I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you that it has become just as shameless as CNBC was back in the late 90s and early 2000s. How they would say to you such and such, you liked, XYZ stock at 100, you're going to love it at 20. Instead of telling you to get out when the thing lost 10% of its value, they tell you to hold on and keep buying. Dollar cost averaging is what they like to call it. And really, it's foolishness because what's happening is they're selling to you because they're getting out and you're buying on the way down. That's what the rich do. That's what the elite do. All right? Okay. And it should be noted that as far as the the gimmicks that are used to get you into to feed into the hype, I think is terrible, especially in the trading aspect of things. I've noticed that when the markets were falling, and obviously in a bear market, they told you that you should be buying in the paper markets, and that was just terrible advice, instead of letting you know that it was apparently accelerating in a long, protracted down market. And that's the same thing that CNBC and them did back after the NASDAQ bubble bursted in 2000. They were in denial. I remember when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac was collapsing. I remember warning people back when Fannie Mae was like at $90 a share, and I was telling people they needed, to come to terms that it's bearish, it's in a bear market, and they need to take profit and or position themselves on the short side. And I was laughed at because the housing market was on fire and everybody was making money hand over fist. And instead of taking solid sound advice, they took the talking head advice on television, telling them to stay the course and spouting all these investing principles. And those investing principles betrayed them. And a lot of people lost all their money in the dot-com bubble. And a lot of people lost a lot of money and had to file bankruptcy during the housing market debacle as well. So unfortunately, betrayal is something that Wall Street does very well. They'll suck you into a quote-unquote investment, and then after they've pumped it up and sucked all the money out of it they pull the rug out from underneath of you, and then you're left holding the bag. So how can you then, expect to be told anything good coming out of there? So now all of a sudden we make up for all the bad years of bad advice now, and you think they're going to tell you something right? You think the powers that be are going to come and tell you when exactly they plan on pulling the plug from the markets? Of course not. Of course not. It always comes in shock and awe. It comes when you least expect it, but it always comes, always, in a time where the markets are already going that way naturally. It's already along the natural course of things. I've already showed you in the prior video that 9/11 happened as far as the price action. We basically had 18 months worth of price action happen in a week, but it was already the natural course of things. All right, had you been a trader back then, you would have seen that the market was in a downtrend, and you would have positioned yourself on the short side. All right, and you would have made a lot of money. But if you would have listened to the talking heads on television, you would have constantly been buying on the way down, and you would have been one of those people who lost all your money and your life savings, like those people that unfortunately someone bought Yahoo when it was $300 a share. Someone did. All right, it traded up to that 300 mark. Someone lost money when it was at 200. A lot of people lost money when it got to 200. If you didn't get out of the market when it went from $23 a share to 300, if you didn't take profit up there in the nosebleed section in the Yahoo stock, then you got your face completely and utterly ripped off. And that's the point that I wanted to make here. So with that said, what is going to be the role of precious metals in this new paradigm that we find ourselves? We're in a new market now. We're in a new economy, a new economic phase. Okay, everything is electronic now. All right, so with the new electronic one world currency money market that we're in, and we have been in for some time, they're just rolling it out now in mass. What is going to be the role of gold and silver? Well, I'm here to tell you that the end game for gold and silver is that it's going to be deemed worthless. I didn't say that it will become worthless. I said it's going to be deemed as worthless, because that is the end game for it. If things get too bad off, they're just going to restrict the buying and selling of it altogether and make it an act of national security and make it illegal to even hold. They've done it before. For those of you who are unaware of this fact, well, understand that it did happen. It happened before, and it's going to happen again. Gold will be rendered worthless in the new system. All right. If all the predictions are correct and America implodes like Russia did, there will be nothing on the shelves to buy, especially food, at any price. Try spending gold at your local store and risk being attacked and robbed. And if martial law is enforced, you won't be able to go anywhere anyway. So you will have to make do with what little you have, if anything, left. All right, so think about growing a garden, you say? Well, then be prepared to stand guard over it day and night, unless you have your own military or you have enough people on your compound where you guys can sleep in shifts. Furthermore, the control mechanisms will be set in place, and for a limited time, you may be able to gain access to digital credits in exchange for your gold. All right, the powers that be can set up all kinds of control mechanisms through the new control grid, this electronic system. In other words, they can make one do as if they want. They can say, all right, this is what you need to do if you want access to your gold investments. Gold has value because people have chosen to make it valuable for centuries. Same with precious gems, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, etc. They're valuable because people want them. So the final stage of evolution in this new monetary system is going to be a universal embrace of electronic money, which we're seeing already taking place and has been for some time now, technically speaking since 1994 on a more global scale. Indeed, this final stage has already been commenced, as I just stated, and all the international monetary bandits now need to create some kind of world crisis, such as a nuclear attack, trying to, hit the hornet's nest of Iran, trying to goad them into war, and whatever they can do to bring about a would-be total collapse of the U.S. dollar. All right, and then that will make a mass stampede away from paper currencies. Now, if that doesn't work, then they may use a psychological shock of the collapse of the dollar. All right, there's so many different things they could do. All right, but here's what happens though. If something like that were to happen to the U.S., then electronic money will effortlessly replace paper money as the new cashless money system of the world. Eventually, countries around the world will be trapped with debts they could never repay and would thus be at the mercy of the central bank in their area. All right, they have a grand design to financially enslave the masses. All right, and that would permit them to impose their dictatorship over the whole world. That's what they want. The central bank system is that control grid. That's the system that's in place. Remember, in 1933, the U.S. government enacted legislation at the time prohibiting American residents from keeping gold coins, bullion, or gold certificates in their possession. All right, gold coins were demonetized and were no longer permitted as legal tender, and they could not be used as money. If anyone was caught with such gold after a certain date, he could be fined $10,000 or be imprisoned for 6 months. Now, in exchange for the gold coins and bullion, the Federal Reserve Bank, which we know is a private bank, they offered paper currency by way of U.S. dollars with an assigned numerical value of $20 for every 1 ounce of gold. Most Americans rushed to exchange their gold for paper currency at that time. But those who were aware that they were being ripped off, all right, they didn't. All right, some of them even shipped their gold away to Swiss banks. Now, it is significant that the British government also demonetized gold coins in the same year as the U.S. did. All right, and you need to make a note of that. A lot of people, they don't talk about that, but they did so through the simple expedient suspending of redeemability of the sterling paper pound into gold. It's just that easy for them to do. Wave of a hand. Now, I want to bring it to today. All right. The Chicago Mercantile Exchange has recently done the same thing with futures contracts that are non-redeemable to physical. In other words, you can no longer have the option of taking delivery on your futures contracts. They are instead settled in cash. And that is a fact. And it's been that way for several years now. All right? So you can't even do a workaround and go around the system anymore. They've shut the door. You've been blocked off. After all the gold in the USA has been exchanged for paper currency, the U.S. government then proceeded back in January 1934 to arbitrarily devalue the U.S. paper dollar by 41% and then rescinded the law of prohibition concerning gold that was previously enacted. And the American people rushed back to exchange their paper currency for gold at the new exchange value of $35 per ounce of gold. In the process, they were robbed of 41% of their wealth. Thus, legalized theft that takes place when currency is devalued. That's what always happens. So in other words, the Great Depression was artificially contrived in order to justify the imposition of an international monetary system that would bring order to a chaotic world of money. 2.0 is on the way. It's not an economic collapse per se, rather it's a power grab and forced financial inoculation of the current monetary system. You need to be made aware of that too. In April 2002, U.S. Congressman then Ron Paul sent the following letter to both the U.S. Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve Bank, which incidentally is a privately owned bank. We've talked about that, asking why the International Monetary Fund prohibits gold-backed currencies for its member states. And I quote, I am writing regarding Article 4, Section 2B of the International Monetary Fund's Article of Agreement. As you may be aware, this language prohibits countries who are members of the IMF from linking their currency to gold. Thus, the IMF is forbidding countries suffering from erratic monetary policy from adopting the most effective means of stabilizing their currency. This policy could delay a country's recovery from an economic crisis and retard economic growth, thus furthering economic and political instability. I would greatly appreciate an explanation from both the Treasury and the Federal Reserve of the reasons the United States has continued to acquiesce in this misguided policy. Please contact Mr. Normal Singleton, my legislative director, if you require any further information regarding this request. Thank you for your cooperation in this matter. Ron Paul, U.S. House of Representatives, end quote. So, as a result, individuals and segments and agencies of the government are implementing laws that were established in the books way back in the day, long time ago, while some other laws were placed into the backs of these existing laws. So that's the pork policy, where they stuff other things into bills and legislations. Now, you need to know this. Once the World Bank and the IMF and the central banks establish the world currency, i.e. digital electronic system of credit and debit, they will set the price of gold and or who can access this investment. You will be forced to get updated into the new electronic system or risk losing your precious metals and other assets. You need to understand that going forward. Their control mechanisms, laws, rules, and regulations are already in place right now as I'm recording this video. Establishing central banks into countries seems to act as a vehicle for control over the said countries. And once established, that country gets entangled into the network because it's all electronic anyway. All right. And after the networks of the central banks gets to a point, and everything's running, the worldwide bailout schemes that's been happening, things like that, then I see, soon it's going to start evolving. And this change will be in place to establish more control and them setting up a supreme world bank and a form of global taxation. And then the microchip will be heavily enforced around the same time. And you're already starting to see the push in the commercials for the whole chipping. of individuals. Okay, that's already being rolled out right now. The global tax is going to be the carbon tax and the carbon credits and all, and whatever acronym or way they can phrase it or put it, it's going to be, at the end of the day, it's a global tax. Global taxation now is what they're pushing for. All right, they want to expand and extend the control and the role of the central bank. All right, that's where we're going with this. Okay, already they're talking about carrying out a fictitious cyber attack and using that as a false flag operation so that the international government bodies will have justification to roll this electronic system out, which they will deem to be safer and hack proof. In addition to that, think about it. How did gold save the millions of people in World War II? How did gold do that? If the government is going to control food, do you think that if somebody had several bars of gold, that you could, trade that? Someone would swap a bucket of rice with you for that? No. The world governments want to control the masses of people, and those that do not obey will be taken away to FEMA camps or simply just ignored and allowed to starve to death on the street. That's the end game. Once the money collapses, they shut down the old system, and that's how they grab power and gain control. And they won't let anyone deal in any of the old currencies. Everything's going to have to be electronic, and you're going to have to be chipped, and that will make you a virtual slave going forward. So gold is valuable now. So why is it valuable now? You're going to want to use it so that you can, protect yourself as much as possible to delay you and your family having to be chipped and or put into this new control grid mechanism. Right now, I'm telling you, the system is betraying you because it's not giving you the whole story and the whole truth. It's not an economic collapse that's coming. It's a power grab. They're literally turning off the old system and switching to the new system. It's sort of like when your computer has to install updates. It shuts itself down to install and then reboots itself with those new updates installed. So that's what's going to happen here. Just like on 9/11, what did we do? We shut down, and then what happened? We reopened a week later, rebooted itself anew, and that's where you got your new system and your new market. And that's why most people cannot prosper in the new market, in the new economy of things, this new digital age, because they don't understand that everything's being controlled by algorithms. We have money. Money's being exchanged in light speed, hundredths of a second even. And the old school market makers on the exchange floors have been replaced with electronic mechanisms, the electronic market makers. That's why you see the markets basically self-sustain and self-correct themselves. You don't even need a PPT anymore. You just need to set rules in place and algorithms in place that the markets will self-correct themselves when moved in a certain direction or in a certain way. And the options for said algorithms are limitless. That's why the markets act almost as an artificial intelligence, even to a point. You can have millions of conditions wrapped into your code that will make the markets act thus and so. You only need a handful of people to set and monitor, and maybe one person could be responsible for maintaining this side of things or that side, of this gets out of balance, turn this on. It's at the stage you don't even need people to do that. You just need maybe a team of computer programmers and coders to monitor things and things like that. That's about it. You don't really need anyone to do anything except for maintain said system. That's it. So it's like an IT department. And the exchanges definitely have what? An IT department. Yes, they do. Because they need it. They don't need floor traders and brokers anymore. They just need computer people. Everything now is computerized, roboticized, and that's where we are. Stay tuned for our next installment where we're going to talk about and demonstrate how all roads lead to Rome. Very interesting and helping you understand going forward how you're going to be able to navigate the markets and how this will affect every aspect of investing and how traditional rules of investing have died. They died a horrible death. Buy and hold is dead. Value investing is dead. All of that, everything you've ever been taught about in investing, everything you've been taught about economics, even in business school, is dead. And I will demonstrate that in the next video. Thanks for tuning in. Be encouraged. Until next time. We'll leave that for another set of videos. I want you to look at this picture right here. This picture, for those of you who don't have children, or maybe you are never played video games, this is Mario, okay? And this is little Yoshi. Isn't he cute? He's adorable. And that's one of your little flying, what is it, Zumbas or turtles, whatever. Turtles happen to be my favorite pets, by the way. I love turtles. But as you look, it says betrayal. You traitorous swine. Mario basically used Yoshi to hop, and then he betrays him by jumping off of him, basically bouncing off of him, and letting Yoshi fall to his death, basically. Alright? Mario knew what he was going to do before he did it, and he amateur, because everything I do, is self-taught and stuff. I'm not saying professional, but I've made it my life's work to interview all sorts of people that I've ever come in contact with, and I've known a lot of people, worked with a lot of different people from all walks of life, including celebrities and including powerful business people and high up in government, you name it. And working in law enforcement, you meet a lot of people and learn a lot of things too. Some of which I can actually share with you, but I'll leave that for another set of videos. And that's how Homeland Security is pretty much swallowing up all the local law enforcement under the umbrella of Homeland Security. But to their needs, whatever it was they were trying to do, whether they needed to hedge themselves in soybeans or if they needed to do something in crude oil, whatever the case may have been, Apple stock, you name it, that's what I did. I've worked, excuse me, I've done a couple of things. I also worked in law enforcement, and I also worked in insurance and the healthcare side of things. So I've done quite a few things. I've done a lot in my life. You'd be surprised. That's why I can speak so authoritatively on various subjects, because I lived it. Also, I like to fashion myself as a sort of a journalist slash historian, if you will, of course. Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of chapter 5 in our video series, There Is No Collapse. Picking up where we left off, but pivoting as we're picking up from where we left off, I want to bring something else to everyone's attention. Understand that the power elite that run this world and subsequently runs the markets also is in charge of bending and shaping ideas around the markets as well. Remember, at the end of the day, it's about profit. And so they have to paint a picture of urgency. It's one of those techniques in marketing where you have to create a sense of urgency. All right, that's selling 101. A little bit of background for those of you who are just tuning in. Maybe you missed the first 4 parts. I highly encourage you to go back and listen to the other parts, the first 4 parts, along with part 5, part 1 of part 5, so you can get an overall idea what's going on. But a little background about myself. I worked on Wall Street. I designed trading systems for wealthy clients, designed specifically for to cater